You are now listening to the I Think I Love My Wife podcast. And this is your best friend's best friend, Chidozie Okafor, ready to take you on another journey. Are you with me? Because I'm ready. Let's get it. In this episode, we'll talk about navigating the clock and compressed timeline that women have. We'll discuss the strain that a lack of intimacy can play in a relationship. We'll go through the lessons learned from having a marriage counselor. We'll talk about selfishness as a red flag and how to deal with it. And Bryan will give us a little bit more indication on what he means by his 95-5 rule. Yeah, so I want to get back to something you said, because I think that's really important and something that I'm struggling with mentally. So you said meeting someone in a natural setting where the premises in dating just allows for more of that organic connection, and the construct of dating kind of changes things. And I agree with you. And so I struggle because I recognize what you say, but then I know that construct kills that. Mm-hmm. Because I would say I use the app as a way to meet people, right? But then now I'm in this construct when I just want to see what you're about. Mm-hmm. And so I can't really see what you're about because it's almost like an evaluation from jump in the construct of dating. Like, okay, now there are certain expectations. Like, well, if you're interested, you should call me. I'm like, well, I don't know you yet.
Right.
Or if you want to do this, then you'll do this. And it's like, I'm just trying to get to know you. And where's that balance between dating someone to get to know them and courting someone because you want an end result. I want you to want me.
Right.
And so as you think about your relationship, what you've seen, is there a big difference between dating someone and courting someone? And if so, what are those differences?
That's a great question. I think that I don't know that there is a difference now between dating and courting. What I've seen, I do like a lot of what you're saying actually makes a lot of sense, and it reminds me of this conversation that I had with some women this weekend. And I have female friends, which is actually cool because all of the dating part isn't there. Right. Yeah. So I know a lot of women, and I'm cool with a lot of women and get the opportunity to learn from them. And one of the frustrations that they were saying is that they're getting on these apps and they're finding that men aren't interested. Like they're not really about dating. All they want to do is get on the apps and chat, and it like gasses them. Like maybe that's an ego stroking thing, it gasses them up because they're able to talk to these women, and maybe the men are just trying to get to know you.
Yeah, I would say I fall in that boat, and I'm like, and I'll talk to some of my female friends. Like, so how often, like, at what point do you like get tired if the guy hasn't asked you to go do something, or asked you for your phone number? And the timelines vary, mm-hmm. but it's like, you don't know who you're going to match with. You swipe. You might have 2 or 3 people that match at the same time. Mm-hmm. Like, 1, I don't want to pay for that many things that I don't know that much about you. And 2, I'm really trying to get to know you. So if we're doing this, it's weird because there's such a quick clock. Yeah. And for some areas, necessary reasons, right? I get it. But it's like, if we're trying to do forever, why rush the foundation building part? But we have these clocks that are going on. It's like, well, you want to talk to me? Like, imagine you're on this dating app to date and get to know people.
Right.
And all he wants to do is talk to me in the beginning to get to know me. And it's a frustration that, like, he didn't want to take me nowhere. He wanted to talk to me to get to know me. Like that, but isn't that what we're supposed to be doing?
Right. No, you're right. and I think, and through that, I think that's where the difference between dating and courting comes in. Right. I think maybe date 1 through 3 is dating, and then once you get to 4, 5, 6, maybe that's courting. Maybe it's the subsequent dates evolve into, okay, now we're trying to get more serious, and then that's more courting. But you're right. I mean, a lot of it is just because we're a microwave society. We are interested in immediate gratification throughout all facets of our life. But I do think that that those who are willing to put in that time will reap more positive dividends. And what's really funny is I have a friend who's on his second divorce. He's about to get divorced for the second time. Wow. And And, he's like, I just picked the wrong women and, all these things. And he's like, I just need to find someone who, and he starts listing all these characteristics. And then he's saying that, this person that he's with doesn't want to work out their problems. Right. Well, the thing is that a lot of times the problems that are the hardest to work out are the ones that you saw early on.
Yep.
Where those were the things that you had all the flags early, and it took some time to see them and to see a pattern, right? And what I told them is that it's sometimes after you're married, it's too late. Like where you really need to be putting in the work is ahead of time. You need to put in that, and I think it's hard for people to accept that, but for people who really commit to that, which it sounds like you're doing, I totally believe you come up with better outcomes, because you could either it's like pledging, right?
Hey, don't give me too much credit,
yeah,
but
right.
I'm still trying to figure out these streets.
Right.
But I do think that like I will probably frustrate more people in the beginning, but the ones that continue on are probably going to go further.
Right.
Because I'm down to have fun, but I don't want to be pressured to like making someone believe that I'm more interested than I am. Because with that also comes, you get to a point where you're responsible for someone's feelings.
Right.
And where I'm coming out of a relationship now, and I'm good to date and meet people, and I want to get married. So it's like, you got to get back out there at some point.
Right.
I don't know that I'm at the stage where I want to be responsible for how someone feels, because I take that seriously. Where I know that my actions can impact someone's like day,
right,
and like their whole temperament. That's a lot of weight for me to carry, because I got to be cognizant of how I react, how I respond, how I do things, and if I'm not ready for that,
right,
or what they care about, if I'm not ready for that, then I'm like, I don't want to be in like that type of relationship.
Man, you are a conscious brother, man.
Tell these women I am conscious.
Right.
And so I struggle with that, because like, I could easily do the things. Like I think it's like a game, right? I guess first off, I would say I think dating is like getting to know someone, where courting is like there's an end goal in mind, in the sense like I want you to like me so we can move to the next level. Like I'm doing this for a reason, because I know that there's something I want in you versus dating. I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out what you're about.
Right.
And so I think I struggle with the mixture of those things. Like, how do you get to know someone, but not take it to the point where like, I'm responsible for that person's feelings if I'm not there yet. Because you can play the game, right? And I know like back in the day when you go to club just to pool,
right? Yeah,
and get women and do whatever interactions you may want to have, sex or whatever, just for the thrill of how many numbers did you get today, right?
Absolutely.
You're doing certain actions because you want the net effect of that. Well, you're not out, like I'm not at a point where like I'm chasing women for sex or I want something immediately out of it. I don't feel pressed to do stuff, because I'm like, I'm not here to get an instant gratification. Right. If it happens, cool. But like, I'm not chasing for that, or my actions are not like, this is not how I organically feel. But I'm just going to do it because I know like if I do this, she's going to like it. Then I get closer to wherever I'm trying to get to. Right. And so when you're not looking at it through that like instant gratification standpoint, it's like you could just do what you feel. But then there's this clock. Right. And then people may not be accustomed to, I would say, well, he said he like, we had a good time, but he didn't call me 3 days later. Well, I was impressed, and I didn't want you to think that like we there yet. And so how do you keep them in play to get to know them without messing it so much where they're like, well, they think you're not interested? It's like the struggle.
No, and I mean, in a perfect world, people would just talk about it, right? In a perfect world, you'd say, hey, we're having fun, what's going on, but people, it's a tough conversation to have. Yeah. And I'm not the most like vocal person either. Yeah. We talked about it before. Like I'm more about acts and less about the words. But no, I mean, I think if it were easy, or somebody had the answer, somebody would be making a lot more money than Steve Harvey.
Better apps out there.
Right, exactly.
So let's get back to your marriage. You gave us perspective on the state of dating, but and that was therapeutic for me. Okay. But when you think about 17 years, man, it's a long time. And I'm sure there's been plenty of experiences that you guys have had to overcome. You guys have had children, and not even like young, they're grown. Yeah. What would be some of the biggest like hurdles that you guys had to like navigate as a couple?
Yeah. I mean, since you talked about kids, I think that was really a big one. And I think what I didn't anticipate. Well, what's really funny is as much as my wife and I plan and we have throughout our relationship, the kid part was one of those things that we actually did a lot earlier than we planned. In my opinion, it was like, we're going to be married for, I can't remember, maybe it was 3 or 5 years or something like that before we had kids. But we start hanging out, and initially you're like hanging out with other couples, right?
Yeah.
And it was like all these couples together. And then the next thing I know, we're hanging out and there's all these couples with kids. And I'm looking around, I'm like, when did these kids get here? Right. And then next thing I know, probably the next weekend, she's like, I'm ready to have a baby. And I'm
Baby
like,
fever.
yeah, I'm like, okay. And so
Stop playing.
so she was pregnant by my first, we have a picture of our first wedding anniversary, and I think she was pregnant at that point. So we weren't even married a year
I was
before.
living together.
Yeah. Finally.
Same bed.
Yeah.
Bound to happen.
Right, exactly. But so really the kid part, like, up to having kids, being married in many ways is like dating, but you always have a date, you know.
Yeah. Forever partner.
Exactly, your forever partner. Once the kid comes in, number one, if you don't have children, you have absolutely no idea what it feels like to have children. Okay. It is the most incredible, like the way that you feel. I try to explain how much I love my kids, and the best way to describe it is it's like being in love, like how you feel when you're in love, combined with how much you love yourself, like the narcissism together. That's the best way. It's not like you love your mother or you love your spouse or whatever. It's this interesting combination. And then when they're so little and they seem fragile and you have to provide so much for them, it changes the whole dynamic of everything. And I think for a lot of mothers, it does that, especially because they've gone through like this physical change. They're physically connected in ways through feeding or through whatever that is, and they get a 9-month head start on you being able to really interact with the kid too. And a lot of times that really becomes their focus. And I experienced this, and a bunch of my friends who had kids, and we all had kids at the same time too, experienced this too. When the kids are young, it becomes all about the kid. And I think as fathers, we become all about the kid, but oftentimes as mothers, they are really all about the kid. It's like everything takes a back seat. Intimacy ends up taking a back seat oftentimes. And that was like one of the first things. It was like when that happened, you're like, yo, what's going on? Like, are you still attracted to me? What's happening? You're always tired. There's never time. You don't feel sexy, whatever it is. And you can handle that for a little bit. But, you know, men, at least I won't say all men are the same, but for me, it was like, I need that physical connection. And it, like the frequency with which we would have sex and that type of thing was different. And that put a big strain on the relationship, to the point where we've never had counseling, but we had like a family member who has some counseling background sat and talked to us about things, because it was like a dark cloud was over the house, and she was always upset. And at the same time, when all that's going on, she's feeling like I'm not giving her, quote, what she needs, and I have no idea what she needs. That piece gets to, I've done like, social action and I do a lot of like social justice work and some political type things, and that takes me away, right? And she wasn't feeling like we were connecting on a level, and she would say, well, that made me not want to be physical. So that was one point where and then at the same time, I'm like, all right, well, you know, we're in the house, we're handling all of our business, we're basically roommates. If we're just going to be roommates, I can just go somewhere else and have sex with somebody else. So that's where that starts, you know, that starts coming into play, like mentally, and you have to,
and you're gone.
Yeah. And you're gone. So,
how do you deal with that? Like, how do you know, I would imagine you're in a place where how you probably been feeling, and the bond that you guys have has now been like pulled apart by a child.
Yeah.
Child don't know what's going on, but it's just the way your energy goes. And so whether it's resentment, whether it's, you know, lack of communication, frustration, all that stuff piles up where you're just like, I'm not happy. I would imagine it's probably a period of time, correct me if I'm wrong, where you guys weren't as happy as you might have been in other parts of your marriage. And so then now, like, you know, you take unhappiness and then like there's no physical connectivity that may anchor you when you're still not unhappy, when you still are unhappy, and now you're gone.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm like, oh, you seeing everybody from everywhere. Yeah. Fights and so you're doing all this, and in your head, thoughts about like,
did you say thoughts? Did you say thoughts?
Not thoughts, but thoughts. Right. It sounds exactly the same. But thoughts of, if we're not doing nothing, I could be out here with others. How do you navigate that? How do you bring it in? How do you communicate that? Like, what happens or what happened?
So for me, I did not step out, which is good. And I told you before, the main reason isn't because of the love for my wife. And I've told her this too. It's like, man, I can't cheat because I know that this is what's right for me. And I know myself, and I feel like I do not have the level of humility that it would take to repair, to win you back. We would just have to, make it a wrap. Other thing for me personally is when my biological parents were together, they split up because of infidelity.
Gotcha.
And that was one thing. I never wanted to be that guy. And so that was part of it. And a lot of like, talking to myself, and really weighing the negatives. And one thing that I have the good fortune of is that I was a really emotional child, and I was a very emotional child. I was a crybaby. I would cry at the drop of a hat. I had to learn to manage my emotions because if something hit me emotionally, I couldn't recover. Like I couldn't think straight. And so I learned at a young age to compartmentalize my emotion, kind of put it to the side, and then act a little bit more logically. And even through that, that's how I did it. Tough thing is most men aren't like that. As much as we like to think that men aren't emotional, men are mad emotional. Men are very emotional. And so, but for me, it was kind of talking to myself, being a little bit more rational. Thankfully, my wife really pushed some type of therapy or having someone else step in before it got toxic. And then I do.
Were you open to that?
I was open to it. And I think I'm pretty progressive in a lot of ways. It was like, all right, cool. Let's do it. Like even now I said that we've never had any like real therapy, and it's not because I'm averse to it. I've just always been like, well, why, logically for what reason? And I'm starting to even hear as this is getting more popular, people are talking about it, just having that consultant that can see around corners for you and that kind of thing. I get it. But yeah, I was fine with it. And at least I think I would. Maybe I wasn't as fine with it. It doesn't. I don't remember being super averse to it at all. Gotcha. Yeah, but that helped. And then just getting up every morning and trying again. I mean, that's really what it was. Trying to make it through the day, and that's another piece too. Like what I found in getting past infidelity is there's a lot of yeses before the actual
what do you mean by
that you have a lot, you agree to a lot of things before you step out on your significant other. You agree to meet up with somebody, you agree to have another drink, you agree to go back to the room, you agree, so there's a lot of different things that are
where it could have been stopped.
Absolutely. And one thing that I learned in my 10 years of dating is I know how weak I can be in certain situations, and I just have to create roadblocks and put them in my way so that I won't do it. So I would know first thing I'm going to do, I meet somebody I'm attracted to, I'm talking about my wife and kids right away.
Bryan and I have been married for 17 years. Here's my kids.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we joke, but I'm really quick to be like, yeah, this because as soon as you do that, most women are gonna be like, oh, okay, I'm good.
You don't want to give any indication
Absolutely.
that like I'm looking too.
Right, exactly. Even if, and the thing is, it's not like it goes away. I mean, I'm still human, and I'm still attracted to people, but I would, you have to throw up roadblocks, and that's what I learned to do. It's just that don't if you put yourself in the situation, you're going to fail. You know you will, so don't do it.
Yeah.
And that just comes with maturity over time too. So that's another thing that helped me.
In your counseling like sessions that you guys had, what was your biggest takeaway from that? I guess biggest takeaway and thing that you came out surprised at, like, that you learned, like, oh, I wish had I knew this earlier, I would have, like, aha moment.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing was that, well, going into it again, I'm feeling like there's some type of serious attraction problem, or that my wife just isn't interested in me anymore. And and one of the reasons, but her problem wasn't that she wasn't interested. It was that she wasn't receiving something from me. And for me, it was just like listening. It was like making time. One of my biggest issues is that like mentally, I'm a lot of times I'm somewhere else.
Yep.
You know, I'm in my head. I'm like trying to solve all the problems of the world. I'm thinking about political things. I'm thinking about socioeconomic issues, and not just like I actually have to shield myself from some of it, because like if I haven't watched, what was the Central Park 5 movie that everybody, When They See Us, I was like, I can't watch that because everybody else will watch it and they'll be upset and they'll be mad and they'll cry and all that stuff, but I'll watch it and then I'll have to go start some type of movement to like seriously, yeah. and then it's going to take that much more of my mental capacity and time for my family, right? And so that was it. It was just like I just needed to slow down and to be a little bit more present. And I still try to work on that now because my nature is not to be present. Like I hate talking about my day. Like that's one of the worst. Like how's your day is one of my least favorite questions, because I'm like, I don't want to talk about my day. Like there's other, right. It's over. It's over. Let's talk about something more important. But for her, that's how she connects.
It's a level of connectivity.
There's a level of connectivity. And sometimes I just have to sit and listen and be very active in my listening and challenge myself to focus for more time, because I know when I get the preamble before she gets to the point, I'll be off somewhere else mentally. Yeah. So that was the biggest thing, was just that I needed to spend more mental time.
Would you say, just kind of like a easy throwaway question, but like, you are the man today that you were when you got married, and if not, what ways have you grown or changed? Yeah,
no, I'm not the man that I was when I got married. One thing, and this was another big shift. Like I left corporate America and went to work for higher ed, and took like a $30,000 a year pay cut. And one of the reasons,
what were you guys in your like relationship?
So at that point, we had, my oldest daughter was 3 and my youngest daughter was just a few months old. Gotcha. When that happened. And so that would have been, what year would that have been? That would have been it's like year 5 or something like that. And so I was this corporate guy that was always away from home. Was just wasn't around that much. And I think that I made a conscious decision. One of the main reasons that I changed that was because I wasn't able to give back to my family and to connect with my family. So that's one thing. The other piece was that that I was very much my ambition was a lot more centered around like corporate, like moving ahead in my career. Mm-hmm. In a way. I was always thinking about tomorrow, and I wasn't thinking about today. And I had a good friend when I was 34, got killed in a motorcycle crash. And we had just been talking like about what we were going to do later on, that week. And that gave me a certain sense of mortality that I hadn't had before. And so as a married person, I value those moments more. Like up to that point, my wife and I, we had never been on a vacation. Actually, when he was killed, it was the first vacation that we'd ever taken together outside of our outside of our honeymoon. And after that, like we pretty much go on a trip every year, just me and my wife. Every year we'll go and we spend that time. So those are things that have changed. I think on the, I talked a little bit about the intimacy piece. Even outside of having kids, I think that we didn't necessarily see eye to eye, or our drives weren't the same. And I learned to need it a little less. And I think she learned to give it a little more. Like we've met in the middle a lot more.
You had a higher drive than she did.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
Because I think that tends to be something that people, like anything, you may not be, aligned the same way. And so how do you work through that? Once the recognition's like, you're like, hey, yo, it's been 2 days.
Yeah.
It's been since yesterday.
Right. Yeah.
And she's like, I'm tired. And so, okay, he was tired. And then over and over, that's the routine cycle. I can imagine frustration builds in certain situations, and it may be projected in different ways versus specifically what it's about.
Right.
How do you, one, bring it to the center of like, this is the real issue, and then two, work through like what compromise looks like?
Yeah. So, I mean, I can just tell you how we've done it, or how I've done it. It was initially just through, your normal frustration, some type of blow up after, the 8th time that and through that, having some conversation about it, and not always really calm conversation. Like I said, we had, somebody that we talked to about,
so that helped.
That absolutely did help. And I think on that side, it was her hearing it a little bit and me saying
outside
it
of you.
Well, not, it was me saying it, but I think the way that the third party was able to get me to communicate about it, and also just calmed all the tension, because you can't just act up around somebody else, right?
Someone does arbitrate.
Exactly. And so and that, I think that kind of helped her understand me a little bit more, and me understand her a little bit more. And then and honestly, what I ended up having to do is just find other outlets a little bit. It was just like, look, how important is this, right? And I will say that I was very vocal about how often I wanted to do it. That which is kind of big. People are like, because people don't know like what's right. Yeah. I think it was like, I was like, at least once a week, at least, because there are some people. Yeah.
So that was where you wanted to be once a week.
No, I said at least.
At least.
Yeah, so me, it's like, it's probably every 3 days.
Okay.
I probably every 3 days is what like
you're good.
Yeah, I'm good. I like that's when,
before you start thinking about it again, you're like, hey, fourth day, like,
yeah, 72 hours.
That makes sense.
Yeah, every 3 days.
Because I reacted because I thought you were gonna be like every day, every couple of days. So I was like, was a week the hard thing?
Yeah.
Funny, me and my friend were just talking. He's married, and we were saying like, it's crazy when you're younger. You used to be like, man, if I get it every day, I could, and now you're like, man, I really could just go, every other day, every 2 or 3 days. I'm fine.
3 days, about 3 days, and even back then, I mean, you were doing it, but it's not like you needed it.
Yeah,
you're just like, yeah, let's go. But and you just don't have time. It's like video games in a way. I used to spend all day playing Madden. Man, I don't have time to play Madden. Like we have video game systems. I bought a game, biggest waste of money. I played that thing for a couple of days. But I will tell you that there are a lot of married people, I don't know how many you've talked to, who don't even have it once a week.
I think this has been, and part of why I talk about it is because I think people have in their minds what should be normal, and this is not a topic that people generally talk about, even amongst friends. And so when you start hearing that it doesn't matter what couple, this couple's doing it weekly, this couple does it like every other week, then it starts to say like, hey, maybe like if it's every few months, like, we need to step it up.
Yeah.
Or you asking for a lot because, you pressure me for every day, and cats out here getting once a week and I'm fine. So I think it's just a good way to like level study to what people are doing. Because we don't know, because we don't necessarily talk about it like openly.
Right.
And so we're thinking like, they're happy. They're probably getting it every day.
Yeah.
When they haven't had sex in 6 months and you don't even know it.
Absolutely. And the other thing too that I think ends up sometimes being an issue is there's a burden of, okay, we're going to do it every week, but at least once a week. but do I have to initiate every time? Like,
Yeah,
like,
you know,
I'm like, come on. I mean,
kiss on me first.
I'm saying, do I need to be, and you know, and
it's like you tap on the shoulder.
Yeah, exactly.
It's been 7 days.
Right, exactly. And what I will say is that at some point, what I had to do is figure out which one I wanted. You know, do I want it when I want it, or do I have to get it when I want it and have her initiate? And if I wanted both of them, I might have to wait longer. So it's like, okay, I'm good. And then and that was part of it too, just over time, and we just found each other's rhythm. And then as time went on and as circumstances changed, like now, like my kids are older, right? And it's like we're dating again. It is amazing because they can stay home by themselves. You can leave them. we don't need to find a babysitter. They just stay here. And it's just like now it's back to
what it was before.
Yeah, it's amazing. So I do think, and I was talking to it was another younger guy who has like a 3 and 4 year old kid. I was like, man, if you make it through that, there is a lot of time on the other end, because in your whole life, like 14 years is not that long, assuming that you live a full life, and just kind of sticking through it is great. If you stick through it, you can get to the other side. But I do think that what was fortunate about us is that we stepped in when we needed to. We discussed things as we needed to. We built in that time. Like I said, we do our one trip with like just us or some couples without kids, because kids will mess up a vacation too. You have to eat at this the PF Chang, but you eat at all you can't be adventurous. You can't and just that time to reconnect over time is important. So I've been married 17 years, but it doesn't feel like 17 years. You know, I've been with my wife almost 27 years. It doesn't feel like it. It feels like, a couple years, because we continue to grow together and separately.
Yeah, I think a couple of things that you said stand out to me, and there's one that I want to talk more about. I think just the recognition that it doesn't stop. Like the work doesn't stop. You don't want it to feel like work, but it's not that like you being intentional about engaging and listening isn't work, because it's not what you probably would normally do.
Right.
It's not that navigating some of these obstacles isn't work, but like when you love the person or that's your person, it doesn't feel like work. And it's a continual process to continue to reset. Right. And so I like that you said like, we have to reset every year and go on this trip to reconnect.
Yep.
And there's not, we got married and that's we have to keep making sure the foundation is good. And it seems like you guys are doing it through this trip that you guys take, as well as the fact that there may be situations where you guys don't have the answers and you have to call in support to help you guys get past hurdles. And I think that's important for people to realize that, when we hear, the people see the Obamas and they see all these couples and like couples goals.
Yeah.
We don't know the intricacies or when someone actually pulled in some, reinforcement to help us get through something that they couldn't get through on their own. And then we see it. It's like, damn, they've been together for 20 years. Yeah. They look so happy. We year 3 and we fighting all the time. What are we doing wrong? Right. It's like, you don't know those things. So if you get to that point, you should be comfortable in calling reinforcements to get the support that you need to make it work. You should be thinking about it from a standpoint of how do we continue to reset our foundation so that we are in a good place if we do navigate something challenging versus already at the rock bottom.
Exactly.
And then something comes and hits you.
You just sometimes you can see so for me, like if I'm trying to do something and I understand that part of the journey is that I'm going to go through some tough times, then when I'm in the tough times, mentally, I'm like, okay, I'm on the right track, because this is about the time for me to be in tough times. Like I think I never had a 7-year itch, but I had a 14-year itch. You know what I'm saying? Like where you're like, where even as, that thought that you have back, when I talked about not being ready to be married, then it's like, oh my goodness, this is going to be the person that I'm with for the next this amount of time. Yeah. Is that what I'm doing? And you have to check in as well. But again, I think that's natural. It's just like anything. And that's where you have to figure out ways to deal with it, reconnect, see where you are, and understand that your relationship's going to evolve too. That's another thing that I think has helped us be successful, is that that we have lives outside of our connected lives. You know, we don't, like, one thing that I thought early on in our relationship was that we had to like most of the same things. Like we like a good number of the same things, but she's not into everything that I'm into. You know, I'm very, you know, like I said, politics, for example, like I could sit up and watch something or read something like all day. We were taking a road trip one time and I turned it on like Sirius XM. I'm listening to it was right around the time I think that when Obama did the gay marriage, I think he might have done the executive order around gay marriage, but I was listening to that, and then she's like, you know, can we turn this off now? And I was like,
what?
I was like, man, what do you mean? I mean, I just started listening to it. She was like, we've been listening to this for 3 hours, right? Yeah. And so she's not into that like I'm into that, and then she's into, like, she'll watch her reality show sometimes, and I'm not into that. But we're able to do our own thing and then come together at the right times too. Because I think that's a challenge in being in a relationship for a long time, when you become so synonymous with that person that you don't even have your own individuality, and that can really add pressure that breaks a relationship up too.
Yeah. Before we continue, I want to make sure I get a word in from our sponsor, Sharper Services. If times are tough right now, then I know how important saving money can be. Sharper Services, an ACN independent business owner, works with its clients to provide great rates on all home-related bills like electricity, cable, and internet. Check out www.sharperservices.com. That's Sharper Services with an S, to get a free quote and start the process to save money now. He provides this service free of charge. It's convenient, and he makes things hassle-free. Tell him the podcast sent you, and look for more details in the episode description. Just to go back real quick, you know, when you're talking about some of the issues that you all face, especially around intimacy and more physical intimacy, part of it, you said, for you, it was like the actual act of having sex, and for her, it was around her getting what she needed from an engagement standpoint. And so how have you, because I think men specifically, I know how to have sex. I have sex. I'm good at it, I think. You ain't complaining. You ain't complaining. I hear no complaints, is what we say. Yeah. And so, like, one of the things I've learned is that, you know, part of our job as men, in terms of whether us wanting to have it more or all those things, is creating the environment for them to feel loved enough to want to have it. Mm-hmm. And so as a husband now, like, how have you learned to set the mood? Not like, oh, today I'm put candles, but to create the space, like, oh, I want her to feel giddy again, so that we can then, you know, because it's easy to go through life, right? You just do it, and then that stuff you might have done when you were dating kind of goes away. Yeah,
no, that's a good question. I'm not much of a mood setter. Like, seriously, I'm not a mood setter. That's just not. And it was like I was like the slow jams tape guy and all that kind of stuff. Like I would try to set it up. What I think though is I understand how to understand what gets in my wife's head and what she worries about that might make her less receptive to being intimate, such as, like, my wife likes a clean house. She just does. And I'm really good about making sure that kitchen's clean at night. That's
what I mean. Not necessarily like you got candles, but you know what the triggers are.
Yes, I know that.
You come back in the kitchen clean. You're
right.
Like, hey,
exactly. And then, and I also, you know, I know one thing, this is getting back to the kids thing, that when I'm engaged with my family, my wife loves that. Yeah. My youngest daughter loves me to death. Like, she actually says that she loves me more than my wife loves me, right? But when I'm sitting down, I'm working on some math homework and stuff like that, or I'm able to come in and help my kids with things that my wife isn't, you know, as good at. Those are things where she sees that, and that's like a turn on to her, and I know it is. And so
he's like, go get your homework, mom's
right. Exactly. Hey, mom's watching, get the homework. So it's stuff like that. Because I will say that my wife's the general of the house, and I think that that's pretty common in a lot of houses where wives run the household. They have a lot that's on their mind. She's the one that, she just tells me where to be, and I'm there to pick up kids and do that kind of thing. My thing is be there when she needs me. The other thing that I'll say is I have a 95-5 rule. in terms of decision making. So my wife gets her way 95% of the time. I get my wife 5% of the time, and that's a ratio.
Heavy five,
yeah, it's a heavy five. It's the stuff. It's the stuff like, oh yeah, we're investing our money. We're tithing. We're this is the type of mortgage that we're gonna. You know what I'm saying? It's like big stuff, and most of the other stuff I don't get I'm not as tied to, and that helps give her a certain sense of security that makes things run as well, intimacy.
And so,
as well.
I mean, it sounds like your wife is a like type A, kind of alpha female, and I would call you like alpha guy, not literally, but you're not like in your face rah 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 type A, but like you get stuff done. You're ambitious, you're proactive and things like that, and so me also being like that, I don't think I'm a rah 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 kind of like guy like that, but when you're both type A, used to getting things done effectively or efficiently, sometimes that I think people tend to think that like a type A guy wants a docile woman because he wants to like do that. When in actuality, we tend to be more attracted to that.
Yep.
That nature, right? That nature of person, because we appreciate or respect or understand what it takes to get that stuff done, and there's an appreciation for it. But sometimes it may not in the beginning mesh well because you're trying to figure out, where do we cross?
It's your lane. So
how do you figure out that lane part? Because I think more and more women, given just their progressing their careers, have more opportunities. They're becoming more type A, especially the older they get without it being in partnership. They're having to do it on their own. And so now that you're with the type A guy, that he's trying to figure out what his 5 or 10% is going to be.
Right.
And she's trying to figure out, how do you navigate that on both the guy side and the woman side?
Yeah. Now, I think the biggest thing is you have to define the hills that you're willing to die on, right? Because you can do everything.
I like the hills you're willing to die on.
Yeah. you can do everything because you have to do everything, but there's certain things that you're just really passionate about doing, right? And so, for instance, I know how to wash my own clothes. I've been washing my clothes since I was 9 years old. I get married. My wife does not want me messing with the laundry at all. She just doesn't, because she likes it done a certain way.
Yeah.
I know people who would get pissed off about that. Like, I've been doing the laundry. I like it that way. I'm like, you know what? I'm willing to give that up. And that's a small thing, but you multiply that over a bunch of different things. Education, for example, like I'm really big on the, like there's certain things like I put my kids in Kumon, right? So they're in this Kumon math program where they do all this math every day and stuff like that. Now, she thought that was pretty major, right? She's like, I don't know that I want that, I want them to have to do this every day, and they're crying. And here's the other thing, because I'm gone more than she is. She's the one that's sitting down dealing with some of the tears early on until I can come home to help. But because that was my thing, she's like, you know what, I'm going to support you, or I'm going to support doing that because that's what you want. And so it's just, you just have to figure out what you're really passionate about. And it can't be everything. Yeah. I think that it's reasonable to expect that someone isn't super passionate about everything. And if there are two things that you're both passionate about, that one person be the one that handles that, another person one that handles that, and then see if it works. And if it's not working, flip them, see how that works. And then you just kind of have to adjust over time. But I just think you just need to find a lane. And first of all, identify the hills that you're willing to die on. And those should be the things that you hold most dear and you try to control.
Gotcha. And earlier you mentioned the fact that like you've evolved, and I imagine 17 years your relationship has evolved as well. In what ways have you your marriage evolved and changed? And I ask this because, we tend to be in this, you said, microwave society and right now. And I think it's important for people to believe that, like, to understand that, like, who you marry today may not be that same person in 15 years. Just because life changes, passions change, people change. And so I want to understand, like, how has your marriage evolved, but also like your wife, and how is she different from the person you start off with today, in ways that you appreciate, in ways that like you may not appreciate as much.
Yeah. Well, she's more voluptuous now, in a good way. So I'll actually flip that around. I don't think that the that we've changed much fundamentally. Like the fundamental things are really the same. And that's why I say it's so important to pre-qualify, because those fundamental things aren't like, you're not going to change someone, right? So one of the big things that I talked about early in our relationship was this selfishness thing. It was like my wife didn't even want to share her food half the time, right? It was like that. No. And see, and I don't eat after people, so sometimes it worked okay, right? But it was like she was thinking about herself before everything else. And that's one thing that now has pretty much done a 180. I still think that that there are times when she's like for instance, this is like small silly stuff, but my wife will take my clothing, right? And like a sweatshirt of mine. Oh, I like this big sweatshirt. And then she wears it. Next thing I know, it's not my sweatshirt anymore. She's just adopted. She deboed my sweatshirt.
Yeah,
like this is our sweatshirt, right? Let me like try to take anything of hers and just adopt it. Like I can't. Not that I wear her clothes.
I like this hat. I like this hat.
Like that. Whatever it like. And she's like, no, that's mine. Or she'll give. For the kids, she'll give the kids my stuff or whatever, and
Mine's
she's very,
mine,
right, exactly. So there's still that. So I see that is that kind of selfish nature that's still there, but on the big stuff, right? On the big stuff, it's like, okay, she's gonna give. So that's one thing. She's less like selfish. I think that she understands me a lot more and the space that I need to do whatever I'm doing, because I can be creative. Like I need, like I'm an extroverted introvert.
Yeah,
like,
I'm an expressive introvert.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. So it's like when I'm in an environment, I can talk to anybody. I'm energized, all that stuff. As soon as I leave, my energy is going to drop. I need to get a book. I need to sit in thought. I need to, and she's learned, okay, he's in his process, and I'm gonna leave him alone. I'm gonna find something else to do.
And it has nothing to do with her.
It has nothing to do with her.
Yeah.
And she likes to talk. I'm not a big talk. I'll talk about like
no, it's funny
subjects, right?
I understand it because I know you, and I'm like that. People see me out, like, I'm like, when people that know me, we could be sitting, I don't say anything to you.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't need to, but like I could turn it on and then people think that's my nature. But it's like, nah, I really can go. So sometimes there's a drop off between what people have experienced,
right,
and then what's me and my like home
centered space. And it's like it's situational, right? Yeah. I mean, because they're both me. I can be the life of the party and I can be fun or whatever, but I can be a little moody. I can be a little, I can be very introspective, very quiet, and I don't like small talk, and that type of thing. And she does. It's funny, for a long time, my wife would never go to the movies. She did not like movies because you weren't interacting in movies. Yeah. But she knows that I like movies. Now she's like, yeah, let's go to see this Issa Rae movie coming out next week. And she'll do that. So she's changed in that, being type A, I can totally see that she's, trying to meet me in the middle, and I'm doing the same thing. And a lot of times she's like, you just don't know how much I'm trying to do X, Y, Z. And I'm like, no, I see it. I absolutely see it. And I've had to do the same things.
Yeah. No, it's interesting because I had a friend that got married, the interview, I think it's on the first episode of season 1, and he was basically saying like his wife is so independent. She's been, before they got married, so independent. She had her own house that she like leases and all this, and she had to just learn, like, let him be by himself and watch football sometimes. Yeah, they don't got nothing to do with her. Yep. That he just needs those spaces, and that was an adjustment for her to understand, like, him being quiet or not wanting to be bothered didn't mean that he was upset. Right. It just meant that, like, he just needed that time. Yeah. And so I'm glad that you said it, that, because it made me think about something you said earlier, Brown, like, you gotta, which we were talking about your friend, and you were like, well, he probably saw some red flags earlier that ended up being the reason why they're not together. Mm-hmm. And so I think selfishness is like really, really like a big deal. It is. And so was it something that you noticed and saw was a red flag and felt like, well, everything else is still great, so I can, this is the L I'm going to take, right? Because no one's perfect. Yeah. Or was it a red flag that, like, how was it for you? Because I would think that's a big deal, but she might have brought way more to the table where you're like, we can work on this because everything else is...
Right. So, that that was a big red flag. And one of the things that happened, you know, I talked about a hiatus, right, in college. And so there was a time when I felt like that the selfishness is what almost broke us up. And that was a huge red flag, but it was a humility in how she handled it that got us back together, that made me feel like it, like that there was hope. And it was early in our relationship, but it was like a traumatic experience. And but I saw how she was willing to change in that short period of time, like a year.
Yeah.
And that's it. And had it not been for that, I probably would have, you know, that would have been the deal breaker. And actually it almost was. It was like, nah, I'm good. I can't do this, and we're not gonna do this. And she just showed through that type A personality, like, no, I'm in this. We're gonna get through it. And that's what made it less of a red flag. I saw that it could change. So, and I think she did change. I think she changed through that.
You know, it's tough. I think selfishness is one. I think most people are selfish, right? And someone told me, he's been married for a minute. He's like, there's probably less than 25. When you think about personality types, probably less than 25% of people that are just natural givers and selfless people.
Yep.
And so, if you know that most people are selfish, it's one of the things that you have to be mindful of. And I think personally that, like, relationships, especially when it comes to marriage, you want to have like someone that puts you above themselves. And I would tell someone in my past relationship, I was like, I want someone that is willing, not that I'm going to be asking them to do this, but is willing to cover my back, make sure my back is covered, even if that means that theirs is exposed. Like that mentality.
Absolutely.
Not that I'm going to leverage it, but just to know that, like, if I'm in a jam and you got to pick between your stuff and mine, you got me. Because it's about how do you fill someone else's tank while they're filling yours, so that you never, like, are empty. And so it's always, I think selfishness is a big determinant of how that may play out. So it's interesting that you guys were able to, well, you saw it as a red flag, but it was something that you were able to see signs to, I guess, move beyond, and saw that over time it can get better. You think kids help that?
Yeah, I don't know if it was. I don't think it was really kids, because I think that we like I said early in our relationship, we went through that. And here's the other thing that's very similar to kids. When we went through that, you know, that rift, the easy thing would have been to either not deal with it at all and just not be together, or to just, you know, let it go and keep moving forward. But it was like, no, we spent a lot of time like doghouse situation for a long time, and put in, like, went through that strife to get to a better outcome, right? Same with kids. It's like, it's tough to discipline your kids. It really is. You know,
Beat me like
I know, right. You thought it, but you know,
it was like a hair short of enjoyment for him. I wouldn't say he enjoyed it, but he didn't seem like it was tough. He didn't lose sleep.
Exactly.
He might have, but he didn't come off that way.
I mean, you do not. Your child, like I said, is back to that being in love and loving yourself. Like, you don't want to hurt yourself, but you have to do it because you know that there's a better outcome. And I do think that as long as there's not, like, you know, there's not a, like, physical abuse or serious mental emotional abuse, sometimes you do have to work through something. But you also have to know when to cut bait. Like, I know the same person on his second divorce, my friend on his second divorce, was in counseling while he was dating. And I was like, what? Like, to me, that didn't make sense. Actually, the dating part is the easy part. Like you should be coasting to the marriage, right? If you have to get it while you're dating, and this is me talking, other people might have other feelings, but I'm like, I would just cut bait. That's really too much. That's too much. It's just too much.
It's interesting. I've heard different takes on that. I personally have done it. I went to counseling with the person I was with because we were at, like, a standstill of we just didn't have the answers. I think we both cared about each other in our relationship, saw a future in it. It was like, if we don't know how to do it, let's get help, because I think we both invested in where we could go. And so we were probably like a year and a half in when that happened. And then the other person we didn't go to counseling because I feel like that person wasn't really would be receptive to it. And I feel like that person needed to have some like their own things to figure out,
right?
And wasn't trying to go for themselves.
Yeah,
But we did do premarital.
Oh, okay.
And so,
so you were engaged?
No, we did before.
Okay.
And so I've talked to a couple people. And they said that they would actually recommend premarital counseling before you even get engaged, because it's like once people know there's an engagement, you feel more pressure to try to make it work than like figuring out, does this work? Because like, yo, we already got a date.
No.
We're kind of going through this to check the box and learn some things, but not are we asking and answering. Are we willing to walk away from this if we find out information that tells us to walk away?
No, I think that makes sense. That definitely makes sense. And I think when you are talking about these compressed time frames that you talked about before, you know, maybe putting a little bit more effort ahead of time is helpful. So I could see that work for some people. For me, I'd be like, nah, you know what? We're good.
I know one couple, he's been divorced, now married, they're good. But he said they go, if I remember correctly, they go like once. It's more of a like restorative thing. Just like, it's just a good place for them to talk, continue to, he's always saying mitigation over like preventative measures. Let's have a platform where we can talk about and continue to build skills. Not that anything's wrong, but like we don't need to go to a mechanic to engine's broke. We could have been doing the oil change and all these other preventative measures too. So I think it depends on different folks and how they see that type of support.
Right. And I will say that's something, and I said a little bit earlier that I definitely want to explore too. I mean, another thing with my marriage that I think has been helpful is I've never felt like it was guaranteed. Like I was like, something could happen at any point and we could break up on something. And so I was intentional about doing things to try to preserve it. Right. And this is one of those things where I'm like, okay, we've made it this far. We haven't really had a ton of counseling. Why not check it out? I'm cool with it. Let's do it. So.
And look at you 17 years later. Hey, I would love to keep talking, but it's that time and we got to call it a day. Join us for next week. I'm going to bring Bryan back and we're going to go deep on how him and his wife does money. We'll talk about his perspective on the value of having a big wedding. We'll spend some time talking about how he navigates the things that his partner wants him to do, which is not his natural inclination. And we'll also talk about how he views leadership when being married to an alpha woman. Thank you again for everyone that's tuning in. Thank you, Bryan, for being here. Please join us next week as I wrap up my conversation with Bryan. In the meantime, make sure you're telling friends about it. You're pushing it, the movement that we're trying to do. We're keeping the conversation going. Follow us on Instagram at Think Love Wife and subscribe. Make sure you subscribe to the I Think I Love My Wife podcast on any of the platforms of your preference. Until next time, my beautiful people, I hope the conversation keeps going.